The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
And welcome once again, folks, to episode, I can't believe I'm about to say this, 41. Wow. Of Wrestling Unwrapped here on the W2M Network. I'm your host, the new face of W2M. I'm sure I'm going to get an email about that. Patrick Hetza. And joining me, as always, the stupid idiot himself, Harry Broadhurst. How are you, Harry?
Yeah, and that email's going to come from Jerry McDevitt. You owe them royalties.
I ain't paying them a damn thing. What are they going to sue me for?
Gimmick infringement, amongst other things, honestly.
That's not what I meant.
Would you rather have Jerry mad at you or Garmer? Because, frankly, you're towing a fine line here. The views and opinions of Patrick Ketcher are solely of his and not reflective of myself or anybody else here at Wrestling Unwrapped.
I meant, like, remember the end of Rocky V? I know, the one that no one ever wants to remember. But Don King ripoff says, touch me and I'll sue. Rocky says, sue me for what? He meant, what are you going to sue me for? I don't have anything anymore. That's what I meant, too.
I've never seen any of the Rocky movies in full, so I can't answer that.
What?
I don't watch movies. And this isn't a podcast about movies. This is a podcast about DVDs, two entirely different things.
Right. And speaking of DVDs, this week's DVD is of DDT4. It is the actually most recent, because they did not do one in 2016, and to date, they have not done one for 2017 either. We will be covering the 2015 edition of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's DDT4 Tournament. Now, real quick, don't ask us to actually name the full name of it, mostly because that second D, I couldn't tell you.
Dynamite, Dumbarte?
You did that.
Dumbarte, something like that. Tag team title tournament.
I'm going with Dynamite, Dumbarte, hell if I know. Indeed, tag team title tournament. So, DDT4. Couldn't it technically be D2T4? Yeah. Couldn't it technically be D2T4?
Yeah, but then we're approaching C3PO levels of ridiculousness, and nobody wants that. You never go full C3PO.
Never go full Jar Jar Binks. All right, different thing. Anyway, so indeed, we will be covering the 2015 edition. Now, what makes the DDT4 tournament different? Well, it depends on if one certain tag team is in it. If the tag team champions are in it, are not in it, then it is an 8-team one-night tournament to crown number one contenders for the tag team championship. If the tag champions are in it, which in this case the World's Cutest Tag Team, Joey Ryan and Candice LeRae are, then every match that the reigning and defending tag team champions are in are for their belts. So there will be a definite 3 title matches in one night, as long as the tag champs are there. And in this case, like I said, they are. So we are going back to California, back to the sweatbox that is the American Legion Hall in Reseda. And boy, are they having some controversy right now anyway, because they kind of have another tournament coming up, and no one can get tickets. But that's neither here nor there.
I assume this is a battle. I assume this is a battle of the Los Angeles snafu.
Isn't it always?
Oh, well, you know.
That's one. Anyway, before we get started. Oh, yeah.
This episode of Wrestling Unwrapped is brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest. Stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. If you're a fan of anything wrestling, DVDs, action figures, VHS tapes, magazines, posters, and more, you can find it inside of the Madhouse Toy Chest. Mention that you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped and receive a free gift with the purpose.
And, of course, as always, we are a presentation of the W2M Network. And for more information, including all of our past episodes, and one of these days, I know we keep saying this, we're going to get back to the written reviews. It's kind of been a hectic time for me, at least.
Kind of been a running joke, is what it's kind of been.
Shut up! Shut up! Anyway. Be sure to check out W2Mnet.com, including our most recent episode, the previous one, Progress, Chapter 36. We're going to need a bigger room again. And one of these days, we're going to write out St. Valentine's Day Massacre. We're kind of still up in the air of, do we actually want to include the third person in that, because it's already hard enough getting the two of us together.
Well, speaking of needing a bigger room, hi, Pro Wrestling Gorilla. B, yeah, it may just end up being easier if we just post the two of us doing the review rather than including Sean, because Sean's not much of a star guy. I know you're not a real big star person either, but...
No, I'm not.
But you do them for the sake of the written reviews.
I do them because it makes you happy, and quite frankly, my pain is your gain. You jerk.
You wouldn't like me when I'm not happy.
Oh, I know. Anyway, moving on.
Also, you can also find that episode 36 of Wrestling Unwrapped Progress Wrestling. We're going to need a bigger room. Episode 41 of Wrestling Unwrapped. Episode 36 of Progress. I was getting there on 411mania.com. Our 40th Progress 36. You can find that on 411mania.com/wrestling as well. We're in the column section under podcast.
As we welcome back our brothers from I guess we're welcomed back by our brothers at 411mania.com. All right, can we get this clusterfudge and a half underway now, since you managed to say 3 different episode numbers for our most recent episode?
No, I said that it was episode 40 of our show, Progress 36. What's the date?
You said 41 also, and episode 36.
What? Yeah, Progress episode. Anyway, what's the date for this show? May 20 what?
22? Oh, man! Sorry.
From the American Legion Hall in Reseda, California.
Why me? Why me? All right.
May 22nd, 2015. This is Pro Wrestling Gorilla DDT4 2015, and these are your results. The Beaver Boys defeat Team Tremendous at 17 minutes and 16 seconds. Yes, you heard that correctly for the opener. When Alex Reynolds pinned Dan Barry, I actually didn't write down the finishes, but it was a roll-up with a tight assist.
You didn't even say his name right.
Lieutenant Dan Barry. Happy?
Officer Dan Barry.
The other one's the lieutenant?
Detective.
This is my first time seeing these guys. What do you want from me?
It's Detective Bill Carr and Officer Dan Barry. Hence why when Dan Barry teams up with Chuck Taylor, they're an officer and a gentleman.
That makes sense. All right, anyways.
That's not a joke either. That's a legit thing.
To advance to the second round. Match number 2 sees the Inner City Machine Guns of Rich Swann and Ricochet, or as he's known in Pro Wrestling Gorilla, Rick O'Shea, defeating the team of Drew Gulak and Biff Busick, now known as Oney Lorcan in NXT, when Rich Swann pins Drew Gulak with a second rope 450 at 21:47. Jesus. Match 3 sees Team Carolina, Andrew Lee, Trevor Lee and Andrew Everett. I'm off to a fantastic start. Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee defeat the team of Love Balls, Matt Seidel and Speedball Mike Bailey, when both pinned Mike Bailey after a partner-assisted 6:30 senton at 17 minutes. I'm off to a fantastic freaking start for this show.
Indeed.
The Monster Mafia defeat the World's Cutest Tag Team. Wrestling's Cutest Tag Team?
Worlds. I think it's interchangeable, but I think for this purpose, Worlds.
Whatever. Doesn't matter. They're eliminated anyway when Josh Alexander pins Joey Ryan at 17 minutes and 34 seconds.
So?
That takes us to the second round.
No, so?
I'm getting to that because they're involved in the very next match.
I know.
The second round begins when the Beaver Boys defeat the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Tag Team Champions, the Monster Mafia, when John Silver pins Ethan Page at 9:57.
Shortest match on the card.
Yes, just a shade under 10 minutes. And people wonder why the DVD is 2 hours and 52 minutes long.
With nothing added.
And everything cut. We'll talk about the delays in the show as well, because Excalibur actually gets in a really funny line that we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Yep.
Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee, but that's all, folks, defeat the Inner City Machine Guns at 16:37 when Everett pins Rich Swann, thus setting the finals for DDT4 for the tag team titles. Talk about those in a second. Non-tournament action sees Johnny Gargano tap DJ Perkins at 12 minutes and 48 seconds with the Gargano escape. Match 8 sees Roderick Strong retain the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Heavyweight title at 21:13 when he pins Brian Cage, who's a machine, after a second.
We can't say what he really is here. We'll get in trouble.
He's a bleeping machine if you believe Excalibur.
Bingo.
After a second sick kick. And your main event of the evening sees Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee, that's all, folks, crown the new Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Tag Team Champions when they defeat the Beaver Boys, as Trevor Lee pins John Silver at 17 minutes flat.
So 3 tag title matches, or I should say 3 tag title, 3 tag title changes in a matter of 5 minutes?
2 hours, 52 minutes, 37 seconds. You're welcome.
With pretty much 2 hours and 40 minutes of that actually being in-ring action.
Yeah, not a whole lot in the way of fluff on these DVDs for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. We'll explain why that is during the course of the show as well.
Although the DVD's length should kind of explain why. Do you want them pulling out double disc sets?
Yeah, really.
Anyway.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they use DVD 9s rather than DVD 5s. If they were using DVD 5s, we'd be looking at a 2-disc set, similar to how Smart Mart Video does theirs.
Pretty much. We'll talk about that, though. Thank you, High Spots. So, thank you very much, Harry. So, it is the one night a year for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla where everything can truly change. You can walk out with the same champions. You can walk out with different champions. As we already know, it's one of the rare occasions where nobody retains their belts. This is the 2015 edition of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's DDT4. And, as mentioned, starting things off, it is Team Tremendous, Officer Dan Barry, and Detective Bill Carr.
Again,
Officer and Detective. No, I'm waiting for you to get it right.
Again, first time seeing them. I'm going to plead ignorance here. Carry on.
Taking on the Beaver Boys of Alex Reynolds and John Silver.
Also, two gentlemen I'm not particularly familiar with. The only experience I have with both of these guys is from watching a Beyond Wrestling DVD called Of Bosses and Busters. A lot of my collection is not new shows. It's 2013 and back. Back when I was
aware.
Back when I was really into collecting DVDs and stuff. I've since gotten out of collecting shows, but I try to get shows from companies that I enjoy as well. And I'm in the process of working out getting more modernized stuff so that way Patrick and I can kind of turn the corner and start reviewing some newer shows.
Yeah, it's kind of weird is because 2013 is about the point where I started going heavy, but I continue with modern stuff, aside from Shiver. So it's kind of weird how that works out. Anyway.
I mean, I got a bunch of 2016 DVDs here we can cover.
Another night. We've got a lot to cover here.
Yes, we do.
A lot. Anyway.
All right, folks, let's talk about Team Tremendous. And Officer, hold on, I'm going to screw this up again. Officer
I know.
Dan Barry and Detective Bill Carr.
Very good.
Okay. I want to give credit where credit is due here. I think it's a very unique gimmick and one that you don't see a lot of. I haven't really seen any cop-related gimmicks in wrestling since the Big Boss Man, and this is a much more modernized take on it because they're almost like private dicks. I mean that in the actual use of the word, like PIs, private investigators, rather than actual police officers.
Not helping. So you wanted Team Tremendous to show their dicks?
I will hang up on you right now.
I don't know.
You don't think I'll do it, but I guarantee you I will. Anyway.
Oh, I know you will. Anyway.
Can I point out who impressed me the most off of Team Tremendous, though?
Would it be Detective Bill Carr?
It had to have been Bill Carr. His athleticism for a 300-plus pounder is incredible.
I mean, all right, I'll pull reference number 2. As Bruce Pritchard would say, yes, with the two of them, there's a lot of ha-ha. But they're actually very, very good wrestlers. If you happen to watch Holy Foley, which, why would you, Dan Barry is actually the one that was training Noel Foley. So they are two very, very good wrestlers. They were mostly bigger in like CZW and mostly on the East Coast. They've made some appearances in AAW here in Chicago, and I believe this was their debut in PWG, if I remember hearing Excalibur correctly. While at the same time, the Beaver Boys were going in having never won a match.
Yeah, you're correct. This was the West Coast, I believe it was actually the overall West Coast debut for Team Tremendous, if I remember what Excalibur said correctly.
Possibly. And like I said, the Beaver Boys are going in trying to just win their first match, which is kind of weird that you're essentially in a tag title tournament having never won a match. Kind of explains the strength of PWG's tag division at this point. But that's neither here nor there. However,
you could pretty much say that about tag team wrestling in general, though. There's not a whole lot of what you would consider consistent, regular, even to this day, tag teams on the independent scene.
That is true. And one of the strongest independent tag teams just debuted for GFW. So.
Well, they've vignetted for CFW. They haven't actually debuted yet. You, of course, mean OVE, Ohio versus Everybody. More commonly known on the independent circuit right now is Ohio is for Killers or the Irish Airborne.
They ain't the Irish Airborne no more. Trust me on that. Anyway, I don't know really how to feel about this match. It didn't feel like the right match to start the show off with. A lot of comedy, thank you, Team Tremendous, but I'm almost afraid to say this, but was it just me, or did it feel like the Beaver Boys were essentially a cheap imitation of the Revival?
No, because you definitely see the personality come out more in the Beaver Boys as the night progresses.
Oh, fair point.
And especially in their second match. This particular match here, I think the biggest issue with the show, and this is going to be a complaint I have about a lot of these matches, is that 17 minutes for an opener is ridiculous. There was absolutely no reason for this match to go this long. I was entertained by it, don't get me wrong. You'll see in my ratings, when I do my ratings for this match, I was actually thoroughly entertained by it. And the kneeling wrestling sequence at the very start of the match is something I have never seen before and thought was fantastic.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, 17 minutes is long. I mean, it's obvious that they wanted to give everyone their fair due here, but 17 minutes.
The problem is they do that for every single first-round match. 17 minutes is the placement line for all of the first-round matches. None of them go shorter than 17 flat. And our next contest, the one that we'll be talking about next, the Inner City Machine Guns versus Drew Gulak and Biff Busick, goes almost 22.
Wait, we'll be talking about the next contest next?
Shut up.
I'm done. But, yeah, it's a little long. The Beaver Boys do end up winning and beating Team Tremendous, which, in my eyes, boo. I think in a lot of people's eyes, boo.
Yeah, well, especially considering who the second-round matchup would be for the Beaver Boys as well. When it ends up being, the brackets end up revealing them taking on the Monster Mafia, I think Team Tremendous versus the Monster Mafia would have been a lot more entertaining of a match. Also, I think that the Team Tremendous would have been able to adjust more to the Monster Mafia style of that heel-face alignment as well. Because it almost seemed kind of like heel versus heel in the second round for Beaver Boys and Monster Mafia, and it just didn't do anything to emotionally invest me in the contest.
Yeah, and then the crowd ends up jumping behind the Beaver Boys after essentially booing them mercilessly in the first round, and then they'd be booed again mercilessly in the finals. Spoiler, but it's already brought up.
We'll talk more about the finals a little bit later because there's one particular person I need to give a ton of credit to for that match, but we'll get to that in a bit. Ready to move on to the next contest?
Indeed, and our next contest is the Inner City Machine Guns, Rich Swann and that Irish upstart Rick O'Shea, taking on Drew Gulak and Biff Busick, as Harry mentioned, now known as Oney Lorcan, while Drew Gulak is bringing back his CDW gimmick.
Yes, it is a campaign for a better 205 Live.
Yes, no fly zone. As soon as I saw that logo, I just looked at it and just went, oh, no. But that's neither here nor there.
I actually really enjoyed his campaign for a better CCW, so I can't complain.
Oh, no. I enjoyed it. I just looked at it and went, oh, it wasn't so much an, oh, no. It was just like, oh, man, here we go again kind of thing.
Well, also I want to give Drew Gulak credit for having arguably the best match I've watched over the course of the last couple of weeks when you consider his 205 Live 2 out of 3 falls match with Mustafa Ali. That being said, this match, not so much.
Yeah. I mean, Rich Swann and Ricochet are damn good. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Gulak and Busick, for what they do, are damn good.
100% agree again.
Put the four of them together, not so good because you have a team that's personality-based, despite being damn good in the ring, and a team that's damn good in the ring, but is, in a rare occasion, all steak, no sizzle, but even their steak is a little iffy.
Yeah,
this did not mesh well.
Yes, they're more of a acquired taste when it comes to their in-ring style. Biff Busick, his in-ring style kind of translates to everybody. That hard-hitting smash mouth, almost that almost that Pero Resu style, the strong style. Whereas I would say that Gulak is much more of an acquired taste because of his mat-based offense. And the problem is, to me, I think there was too much mat work in this contest. I think when you have two top-level high flyers in people like Ricochet and Rich Swann, you need to be able to let them do what they do. This was 22 minutes of a match mostly dominated by the groundwork of Gulak and Biff Busick.
Exactly. And when you're grounding two very popular high flyers, the crowd's not going to get into it. Now, don't get me wrong. If you give me Drew Gulak facing another ground-based wrestler, phenomenal match. There was the unseen, well, kind of unseen, it was only on Facebook Live match of him versus Lightning Mike Quackenbush. The match was phenomenal, and that was 19 minutes. But you have two technical, ground-based, or at least, when Quack is called upon to do it, ground-based wrestlers going at it in their style. So when it matches, it's phenomenal. But you essentially have three different styles here. You have Gulak, who's ground-based, Ricochet and Rich Swann, who are high flyers, and Biff Busick, who's, a smash-mouth, hard-hitting style. Something's got to give, and unfortunately, it gave away in this match. Now, to me, the right team did win, but
agreed.
It took a long time to get there.
Not only did the right team win, but the right team redeemed themselves in the second round. And we'll talk more about the semifinals once we get there. But the right team redeemed themselves significantly in the second round with the matchup that they had against Trevor Lee and Andrew Everett. I think that the issue with this here is that Gulak and Busick as a tag team, they can work in spurts against the right opponents. And I think that obviously Ricochet and Rich Swann have proven that they're two of the best high flyers in the world, but both teams are capable of so much more than they produced against each other here because of the tremendous clash of styles.
Indeed. So as we mentioned, though, the Inner City Machine Guns do pick up the victory, and we'll move on to the semis.
Well, real quick, we will talk about, I do want to give credit where credit is due. Usually you see the Stardust Splash, the 450, call it what you want to, off of the top rope. Rich Swann's second rope variation is gorgeous.
The moves that Rich Swann hits may be the damn prettiest you'll ever see. To me, he's got the prettiest 450, both standing 450 and off the rope 450.
I was just going to say, I was also about to credit his standing 450 as well, which may be the most visually impressive move in pro wrestling.
I would put it second to Rich Swann's own Phoenix Splash.
You probably got to put Neville's Red Arrow up there as well. But yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, because Rich Swann has a damn pretty Phoenix Splash. Now, moving into our next contest, speaking of people who have damn pretty high-flying moves, Matt Sydal teaming with Speedball Mike Bailey, Loveball, God help me, against Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee, the Carolina Boys.
Well, it was supposed to be, if you recall, because Excalibur, and for the record, your commentary team for the course of this evening ends up being Excalibur, Chris Hero, Rick Knox, and Joey Ryan. In the first three matches, it's Excalibur and Chris Hero. So this particular match is Excalibur and Hero as well. It was originally supposed to be the team of the Love Gun, which was going to be Matt Sydal, and Chris Sabin. But Sabin suffered an ankle injury a couple of days out of the show, and they ended up having to call Mike Bailey in as a last-minute replacement, because you'll find out a little bit later in the show it was supposed to be Mike Bailey versus Johnny Gargano.
I'm kind of surprised. I'm trying to think of what's the. I'm kind of surprised they ended up not calling this DDT4 card subject to change.
Technically, it would be DDT card subject to change 4.
So DDTTTCSTC4.
Something like that.
Sure.
But that's all, folks. All right, we're moving on. Porky Pig style. All right.
Speaking of this match.
Yeah. Where do you want to start at here? I think we might be best off skipping towards the end of the match once the action gets hot and heavy.
So, just like we said with the last match, that when you have 4 high flyers and, a complete clashing of styles, that the match ends up not being that good, Ari might actually disagree with me, but what happens when you put 3 high flyers and somebody who meshes well with 1 high flyer in a match like this? It ends up being pretty damn good. And Mike Bailey becomes the wrestler so good he was banned from America. Seriously, he's banned from America.
Did he get the Silesia Sparks treatment?
He did indeed, except I believe, I could very well be wrong, but I believe Bailey got 2 or 3 years rather than us being about halfway through Silesia Sparks' 5-year ban.
Damn sneaky Canadians.
Just like the Super Smash Brothers got, just like Michael Elgin very nearly got 2 weeks after Silesia. He was able to fight it, though.
Somebody get these people work visas, for crying out loud. How hard is it to get a work visa? Anyway,
they're freelance wrestlers. What do you want? Anyway.
All right, let's talk about some of the moves in this particular match here. That apron German dough.
Ow.
I think those months he's spending up in Canada might be because of the free health care from that German. Yikes.
That he pretty much lands on his head, and everyone thinks he's dead.
Yeah, that was a murderplex right there is what that was. That was a straight up murderplex.
Okay, Steiner.
Oh no, we'll talk more about never mind. Not relevant to this particular episode.
I know, but still funny to say. Anyway.
All right. That being said, I originally had this. I know we don't usually give away our star ratings on the actual DVD reviews here. We usually save the star ratings for the type reviews.
We usually fight about them during our watching of it, though.
Yes, I originally had this match paced at 4 stars. The finish took away a half a star from me because it was very sloppy, in my opinion.
So's your phone from you spitting on it so much just now.
I'm not hearing any feedback. I'll have to go back and listen to the episode. Anyway. What I was going to say was I actually really enjoyed this match here, but I think the Tag Team 630 that the Carolina Connection, the Carolina Boys, Lee and Everett, call them whatever you want to, tried for their finish, the pop-up 630, it didn't look like Andrew Everett got all of that, if any of it.
Yeah, I think he may have clipped with a foot. That's it.
But unfortunately, since that was the finish, they had to go with it. So that right there took this down from 4 stars to 3.5 to me. I really enjoyed this match. I thought it was fantastic. But the finish definitely hurt it, in my opinion.
Makes sense. I mean, yes, it was long, yet again. But in this case, it was fast. It kept you engaged. Basically, all 4 guys just went out and swung for the fences. I almost wonder, did they watch the previous match and go, crap? Now we've got to work twice as hard to try and get the crowd back into it. And get the crowd back into it, they did.
Yeah, they were probably thinking somebody's got to get these fans back into it after that snore fest. So the Carolina Connection, and Trevor Lee specifically, did something that Chris Hero has never seen before. When you do something Chris Hero has never seen before, you're doing something impressive.
Indeed.
I, of course, refer to when Bailey goes for the lion salt. He attempts a mid-ring lion salt, and Trevor Lee, rather than hitting Bailey like a normal person might consider doing, decides to go ahead and hop up onto the second rope. In doing so, he pulls the rope down away from Bailey, and Bailey crashes and burns.
Why are they trying to kill Mike Bailey?
Much like Chris Hero, it is something I have never seen before either, and it is an incredibly innovative way to get your partner out of taking alliance on. I thought that was really cool.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And it's weird how it's something so simple. Just pull the rope. Well, okay, stand on a rope, but you get the idea. You know, just pull the rope out of the way.
And yet nobody's thought of it before.
Yeah.
So, seriously, credit where credit is due. Fantastic psychology there by Trevor Lee.
Wrestling is truly so easy that a caveman can do it.
Got him.
That's one of his shirts. That's one of his shirts, bud.
A Carolina caveman at that.
What do you have against Carolina?
I'm aware of what Trevor Lee's gimmick is. Anyway, the other big takeaway that I had from this match is that I called him Mike McCain. Son of a thing. Matt Sydal still has it.
Trust me, Matt Sydal is much better than his brother.
Oh, no, I'm very well aware of the athletic differences between Matt and Mike. It's just slip of the tongue because his partner's Mike Bailey.
Oh, of course. Why do you think I kept calling him Speedball?
But, all right, that takes us to the first of 3 tag team title matches on this particular show. 4 tag champions, 3 tag title matches, 2 men left standing, 1 tournament for the belt.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Monster Mafia and Wrestling's Cutest Tag Team.
Indeed, and this originally was looking to be a complete one-sided affair if you were to just look at it on paper, because you got Ethan Page, who's a big MFer, and Josh Alexander, who's a bigger MFer, teaming up to face Joey Ryan, who, King of Dong style, and Candice LeRae. But at the same time, this is the title reign that started with Candice being completely split open in their match at the 11th anniversary show, in which they won the tag belts.
So that would have been what? June or July of 14?
July 20, yes. The World Tag Team Championship Guerrilla Warfare match was July 26, 2014. So at this point, we're almost 1 year in to Joey Ryan and Candice LeRae's tag title reign. However, we would not get there. And to be fair, Candice more than held her own. But at the same time, when you're trying to fight what is essentially a 3-on-2 battle and you're the smallest person on the roster, there's going to be a problem here. And I say 3-on-2 because the world champion, Roderick Strong, had to stick his ugly, blanky little boots into the match and essentially cost the World's Cutest Tag Team the tag titles.
My assumption to this is that it's to set up Roderick and Joey for the PWG Heavyweight title going forward. I don't have any of the newer shows after this, so I can't tell you if that is where they were going with it, but that would be my assumption. I didn't think the interference made any sense at the time, but then when Joey was on commentary for the triple threat for the title a little bit later on in the show, it kind of telegraphed what the plan was. Not to mention with Joey being part owner out at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, again, telegraphed even further.
No one knows that. Anyway.
Sorry.
So,
all right. So
I got a question for you.
Wait.
I got a question for you.
I might have an answer.
Outside of the originator, how in the hell does Candice LeRae have the best violence party out of anybody?
You know what it is? It's because she's so short, she has to make it look good. Because if she doesn't make it look good, then nobody's going to buy it because she's like 5'0" and 150 pounds soaking wet.
150?
Okay, 115 maybe.
Yeah, I was going to go, she's smaller than me. That's saying something.
Everybody's smaller than me. 250 plus over here. That's the point. I would say probably about 125 for Candice. My problem with this match is it was very stop-start. Like, they would have really intense moments of action, and then they'd slow the match down to a crawl. And then they'd have really intense moments of action, and then they'd slow the match to a crawl. There was no real finishing sequence, and I think a lot of that had to do with the interference kind of throwing them off. Or, I mean, I guess you could say it's a case of the booking hurting the contest itself.
Yeah, this definitely wasn't the best match for Candice and Joey as a tag team because they had some great matches during their title reign. But I've heard nothing but good things, except from Velvet Sky, about the Guerrilla Warfare match where they won the tag titles. Anyway.
And frankly, Velvet's opinion on said matters is frankly irrelevant anyway.
Ladies, let's not carve our faces to oblivion. Let a doctor do it for you.
A little bit lower than her face there, buddy. Anyway, Oh, no.
Her face, too.
Let's talk about, I'm about to say something that I think is probably about to upset you. Because I know you're a super AAW mark, and this guy is huge in AAW, or was huge in AAW. I'm not a big fan of Josh Alexander. I don't get the hype. I don't see it.
That's okay. Ethan Page was also in AAW, and
Ethan Page is damn fantastic. I almost said a different word there.
In the ring, on the mic, he's gold. If long-winded, because he's long-winded on the mic.
Both. I think Ethan Page is more than competent when it comes to carrying himself inside of the ring as well.
Maybe it's just this match, because to me, Josh is actually better in ring than Ethan, as I look at a poster with both of them on it.
I mean, maybe you could make that argument. But at the same time, to me, it just seemed like Josh Alexander had no personality. I didn't see a personality coming through in this contest, whereas Ethan Page, complete asshole, came through crystal clear.
Well, that's Ethan Page.
No,
I don't even know that that's a character. I think that's just Ethan Page.
Well, look back to his AIW stuff with the aforementioned Salacia Sparks, and you get kind of the same idea.
Yes, he's a douche.
And a damn good one. Your thoughts on the mixed crowd?
NXT crowd kind of reared its ugly head here.
For as much good as Joey Ryan has done for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, I think the fact that he's gotten his exposure has kind of caused the crowd to sour on him as well.
The crowd from the previous July, this wasn't.
Well, in fairness, they were taking on the Young Bucks, who have clearly been Rosita's most hated tag team for a very long time.
Not anymore.
No, I know. They're popular again.
For being scumbags. Anyway.
Hit a couple Meltzer drivers, and apparently you get over.
Anyway.
All right. You ready to move on?
Yeah, this was... Well, hang on real quick, because this was definitely a split crowd. This was kind of a NXT-ish crowd, and I'm talking Full Sail. I'm guessing part of it was just the crowd was sick of, kind of seeing... I don't even know that it was strictly Candice, but it was definitely Joey. Just always being on top. And, I don't think it was so much they welcomed Monster Mafia winning the belts. I think they more welcomed somebody else having a belt.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily wanted Josh and Ethan to walk out of there with the titles as long as Joey and Candice didn't. And I think that's more saying towards what their feelings on Joey are than what their feelings on Candice are. And hopefully they've enjoyed Candice while they've had her, because I'm willing to bet they don't have her for much longer.
I don't know that anyone has her for much longer.
That's kind of my point. Speaking of which,
I know.
coming soon to the W2M Network will be our coverage of the Mae Young Classic. Myself, Patrick, and Wrestling to the Max' Paul Leeser will be breaking down the broadcast, starting with bracketology after SummerSlam.
That is going to be such an incredibly long-ass night.
Oh, you aren't lying there. All right. So, it would be at this point, if you were at this show, that the middle rope breaks.
Okay, well, hang on. Before we even get to that, the tag title change is the last match before intermission. So during intermission, it's at that point, if you're at the show, that the middle rope breaks.
45 minutes later, our next contest is for the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla Tag Team titles.
Hang on.
You're killing my flow, dude.
I don't care. 45 minutes. How?
Clearly.
How does it take 45 minutes?
Well, my guess is they had to undo the bottom rope, undo the middle rope, switch the bottom rope to the middle rope, and then put the middle rope as the bottom rope. Because if you notice, the rest of the show, the bottom rope was kind of wanky. I'm willing to bet that they probably put that loose rope on as the bottom rope, so that way it would be safer for people to hit the middle rope rather than trying to take the chance of retightening that second rope and having it snap in the middle of a match.
I hope that's what it was, because when I watched Chris Hero and Pentagon at AAW literally snap one of the brackets off of the middle rope during their match, resulting in their match absolutely sucking because they couldn't do anything in the ring, they went to fix it and had it fixed in 10 minutes. No intermission needed. Well, I mean, the fact that it was intermission probably had nothing to do with it, but they had it fixed in 10 minutes. And that was, like I said, them actually snapping a piece off of the actual ring post rather than snapping a rope or anything. They actually broke it. Chris Hero even makes light of it. So that's why I'm just like, how did it take 45 minutes?
Like I said, when you look at how do I put this, how IWA Mid-Southie that bottom rope is for the rest of the show, I think they switched out the bottom and the middle ropes.
That would make sense. Moving on to our next contest, though.
Which is also for the tag team titles.
Beat me to it. As the new tag team champions, the Monster Mafia, Josh Alexander and Ethan Page, take on the Beaver Boys, Alex Reynolds and John Silver. Surprise!
Thus making the conversation that we had about the middle rope snapping and intermission relevant due to the fact that, yes, it's back-to-back matches on the DVD, but there is a good 45-minute break in between the two matches. The Monster Mafia are not working back-to-back.
Yeah, they're not working that back-to-back. Mind you, at the same time, the Beaver Boys probably had, okay, let's say the Monster Mafia had 45 minutes. Beaver Boys probably had an hour and 45 minutes, given how long the other matches were after theirs, and they were in the opener. So they probably had closer to 2 hours of a break here.
No, you're probably closer to accurate with the hour and 45. Although when you factor in entrances and stuff, you might be close to right with the 2 hours too. I mean, entrances and exits, you might be right with 2 hours because they edit entrances and exits off of the DVD. We'll talk more about that later.
Gee, how much later? Are we going to finish up the show with it?
Dun, dun, dun.
Anyway. Surprise! 2 times over. The first surprise being it's the only match that's under 10 minutes. The second surprise, for the literally second consecutive match, we've got new tag team champions! So the Beaver Boys, who went into the night having never garnered a victory in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in their entire PWG career, are now the tag team champions. Hooray! Question for you, though.
Potentially.
Given how the first 2 tag title matches went, did this telegraph the ending to you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Good, I wasn't the only one. This told me whoever the Beaver Boys were facing were leaving with the belts.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
Not that that's a bad thing.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like John Silver. I'm kind of indifferent on Alex Reynolds, but I like John Silver. But that being said, either way, Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee or the Inner City Machine Guns, you are looking at better options for your tag team titles going forward anyway, in my opinion.
So basically you're looking at a pair of transitional champions.
Well, yeah, and more so transitional for the sake of being transitional to tell the overall arcing story of the show itself.
Yeah, pretty much. In terms of the match itself, Paige and Alexander seemed tired, like legitimately tired. Not that it was a bad match, but it didn't seem like it, to me anyway, really got out of first gear.
Okay, so I actually took notes for this DVD because this is the first time I had watched this show, and I wanted to make sure that I discussed a couple of things about it. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is the PWG crowd mentality, and that is the fact that you mentioned the fact that this crowd is a lot like Full Sail, and the problem is I completely agree with that, but for all the wrong reasons. Because there are times where they can get super into things, and then there are other times where it's like this kind of match where they're sitting on their hands and doing nothing for the vast majority of it. It almost gets to the point where these people have to damn near kill themselves to entertain the crowd in Reseda.
And trust me, we'll see that. We have seen that, and we will see more.
The next thing that I want to discuss about this particular match is the fact that, as you mentioned, despite the fact that it's a short match, it's a very slow pace. And I think a lot of that has to do with the brawling that happened at the very start of the match where they were all brawling around ringside. I think that kind of took the crowd out of it because unless they were brawling directly in front of you, with as big as that crowd was, you weren't seeing anything.
Kind of makes you think PWG should invest in more things. Why does it sound familiar?
Say what you will about the setup in Full Sail, but with the bleachers and stuff and the fact that the seats elevate as you go up in Full Sail, people can still see when stuff starts breaking down around ringside or even going over towards the announce table like the last woman standing match did.
So NXT does a last woman standing match, and then GFW magically does a last knockout standing. Never mind. Neither here nor there.
Technically speaking, there was a last woman standing match in Impact, but in TNA, technically before there was one in the WWE. Neither here nor there.
I'm talking about the 2 most recent ones. Anyway.
TNA still did it first. Moving on. The finish was botched yet again.
Yeah. Not good.
Which is unfortunately becoming a recurring theme for these tag team tournament contests.
Yeah.
Because we kind of talked about this exact same thing in the Inner City or in the Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee match a little bit early on against Speedball. and Matt Seidel. That's all I had for this match. I was very disappointed. We will be talking about this match a little bit more later. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, we definitely will. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Oh, Christ. Again? Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, come on. It was obvious.
Oh, no. This is definitely the worst of the 9. 100%.
Yeah.
We might as well give it away. This is our worst match of the night, guys.
Yeah. Anyway. Before we get to that, though, we got to get through the rest of the show. So our next contest
is a contender for best match of the night.
And not only that, it is a number 1 contenders match for the PWG Tag Team Championship.
And a semifinal in the Dynamite Doom Varte Tag Team Title Tournament.
Good night.
That's what she said.
It's Trevor Lee and Andrew Everett versus the Inner City Machine Guns, Ricochet, and Rich Swann. I believe it's at this point that Joey Ryan joins?
Joey Ryan joins right here. No, this is Rick Knox. Joey Ryan joins for the non-title matches. This is Rick Knox.
Okay.
The dance-off before this match was fantastic.
Carlton.
I lost my crap when Ricochet did the Carlton.
There's one that wasn't done that one of the wrestlers in this match usually does when he's in a dance-off that probably would have been even more lose-your-crap worthy than Ricochet doing the Carlton.
I think the fact that Ricochet did the Carlton in California, the same state where Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was taped, made it all the better.
True. Why in the ever-loving hell did Andrew Everett not do the Alex right?
Oh, God, no. Oh.
Multiple times he's done it.
Oh, boo.
Including at AAW.
Anyways, back to this match here. Everything before the bell was shenanigans.
Everything after the bell was shenanigans.
But it was balls to the wall shenanigans, and those are the kind of shenanigans that we like here on Wrestling Unwrapped.
14 minutes and 31 seconds of essentially nonstop.
And for the first time on the evening, Excalibur got to lose his crap because somebody did the deal.
That was the only time anybody did the deal.
I was very disappointed that we did not get that call from. That's one of my favorite Excalibur calls.
For those that don't know, whenever Excalibur says that somebody's done the deal, he means that somebody has officially hit the Falcon Arrow. And then nobody kicks out of the Falcon Arrow. It's usually a 2 count. As a matter of fact, I think it's always been a 2 count. And then he loses his crap. Oh, my God, somebody kicked out of the Falcon Arrow. Screw you, Hayabusa.
This time, Rick Knox on commentary even steps on Excalibur's line of nobody kicks out when they do the deal.
I'm shocked Brian Cage didn't do the deal. He's usually the one doing the deal. But he did not do the deal.
Cage is too busy doing other stuff in that match. We'll talk about that match soon.
And his girlfriend. What? What?
I got nothing.
You don't have any more thoughts on the match?
Surprising finish.
Surprising in that the team everyone expected to win didn't?
No, surprising as into the way the finish went down.
And it wasn't botched?
Well, there's that. But correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't, and I might be here, but doesn't Everett catch Swann in a roll-up for the finish?
I believe so.
Hold on. Give me 1 second. I'm going to look this up. But
Okay.
I'm like 90% sure that he catches Swan with a roll-up for the finish.
Possibly pulling the tights.
Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Anyway, I was about to, and you keep cutting me off, jerk. This is like just what happens when you have one match that is just oozing charisma. So you have a hot crowd with 4 guys that have personable gimmicks. Yes, even Trevor Lee and the Carolina Caveman, but even still, while he may not be huge on a gimmick, has some damn impressive moves. You know, the catch, I don't even know what the hell you call it, the catch, reverse, moonsault, splash, crucifix.
Oh, the back flip cross body out of the back flip counter to the cross body.
Yes, that. Good Lord.
And no, it was not a roll-up. Trevor Lee countered a DDT attempt by Swan into Orange Crush, and then tossed him over to Andrew Everett for a spike Rana. So it was a head plant on the Rana that did Rick Swan in, not a roll-up. The roll-up is the final match, not this match.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Spoiler.
Well, I mean, we've kind of talked about it already.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
The Carolina Boys are now your number 1 contenders, technically, and they're going to invoke their match tonight in the finals of the DDT4.
After 2 non-tournament contests.
After some much-needed non-tournament action.
To which Joey Ryan joins Excalibur at this point for our next contest, which is Johnny Gargano against TJ Perkins. And Gargano quips about the fact that the tag team title tournament finals are going to be who they are. And when Excalibur introduces Ryan, he introduces him as former PWG tag team champion Joey Ryan. I mean, unless you guys are planning on getting back into the tournament. Joey responds back, anything is possible. Excalibur here is, yeah, why only be here for 6 hours when we can be here for 8 instead?
With no AC, because apparently the AC never works in Reseda. And remember, it's the middle of, well, actually, it's the end of July.
It's the end of May, but thanks for playing.
Oh, I'm thinking of the anniversary show. Sorry. Anyway.
Okay. Johnny Gargano taps TJ Perkins with the Gargano escape. Okay, so you know how I complained about the mat work in the Biff Busick and Drew Gulak versus Inner City Machine Guns match?
Yes.
See, this is what happens when you make your mat work interesting. I'm actually interested in watching it.
That makes one of us.
I thought this was much more crisply executed than it was in the original match, in the earlier tag team match. And I think that the crowd was definitely much more invested into this match than they were into that earlier tag match as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that independent wrestling crowds freaking loved Johnny Gargano.
Now we just got to hope that NXT loves Johnny Gargano on his own. Anywho.
I still need to watch this week's NXT too.
I was actually kind of bored. But being that I've watched matches from both of these gentlemen, I kind of think as I will put it more on Perkins than Gargano.
I think the thing with this particular match, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you were so used to seeing all this high flying and all this bouncing around the ring in the earlier tag matches that it comes as kind of a culture shock on a show like this when you see 2 guys hitting the canvas. Because the only people that really hit the canvas earlier in the show, I mean, unless you count the comedy spot that the Team Tremendous was doing, the only 2 people that really hit the canvas earlier on in the show were Drew Gulak and Biff Busick, as mentioned.
Yeah, they were grounding 2 vastly more popular high flyers.
Whereas TJ Perkins is one of those guys who's just kind of been around Reseda for a long time and has never really broken out in front of the pro wrestling guerrilla crowd.
And to me, he really didn't here either.
No.
I'm glad Gargano won, but I was not exactly big on this match. Not that it was a bad match, but I just found it fair.
I do want to talk about the finish, though. I want to give credit where credit is due here, because the finish actually made Gargano seem like a much bigger deal than it might have to the average PWG fan. Because as somebody who has a history of watching Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows, I know that your run on Pro Wrestling Guerrilla only goes back to 2012 or 2013. I think you said you have a couple of 2012 shows, but it more or less starts around 2013. My Pro Wrestling Guerrilla run goes all the way back into like the 05, 06, 07 shows. I own all of the 06, 07, and 08 PWG shows. And I got to see T.J. Perkins as he was developing away from the Puma character and into T.J. Perkins. And his standout thing was that he was able to go with anybody. It didn't matter who it was if the match was based on the mat. In this particular instance, T.J. got caught and out-wrestled on the mat by a younger and you could argue more charismatic, more fan-favorite guy in Gargano, and was made to tap out right in the center of the ring.
So thereby, essentially, T.J. Perkins turns into his current WWE character of going nowhere.
I'm not touching that one. You're on your own on that boat.
Johnny Gargano picks up the win.
With the Gargano escape.
Such a stupid name.
Disagree. I think it's fantastic.
It's better than the Hertz Donut.
Okay, first of all, that move is uniquely you. Did it right.
It's the Hertz Donut.
And it's Hertz Donut, not Donut. Anyway.
No, it's still called the Hertz Donut.
I don't know what he's using as an NXT finish right now. We haven't seen him wrestle a singles match in NXT in just north of forever, probably since the Cruiserweight Classic.
Yep.
All right.
So our next contest is a triple threat for the PWG World Championship. It is the Machine, Brian Cage, taking on Chris Hero, taking on the World Champion, Mr. Crappy Little Boots himself, Roderick Strong. And it's at this point that Joey Ryan goes into overdrive.
Yes, but I feel the need to give credit where credit is due here, and I'm about to give away another one of my parts of my big finish as well. I have often said that as a commentator myself, a lot of what I look to for wrestling when I watch the show is just to see how well the commentators are able to put over the show, to give you an idea of what it's like to have the entire experience with that particular company. Excalibur does a fantastic job of putting over Roderick Strong here.
There's no doubt about that.
Mentioning the fact that, yeah, Roderick may be kind of a dick now, but he realized he had to get in touch with that in order to bring out his best potential. And it is what has made him the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla World Heavyweight Champion.
You could make the argument that that's happened to a lot of people. That happened to Zack Sabre Jr. as well, where his best work was after he became a dick.
I haven't gotten a chance to see any of Zack Saber's PWG work, so I can't give an opinion on that.
Fair enough, but you understand what I mean, though.
The match itself is good, but not great. And I think that the problem is with the three names in this contest that you have in Roderick Strong, Chris Hero, and Brian Cage, you expect great.
Yeah, this is one of those where, especially with Roddy and Hero, you're setting that bar high. And while this wasn't a bad match by any means, you know, this would have been great if you set the bar lower. But instead, I think a lot of people set the bar too high. Plus, part of it may have been the fact that everyone was tired, because I believe by this point, it's the next day. Thanks to the delay from the ring and how long all these other matches are, remember, at this point, we're still at the fact that only one, and it would be the only one, goes under 10 minutes, we could very well be talking about it being Saturday morning by this point.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Excalibur actually references the fact that it's coming up on 11:30 at the beginning of the prior match, even before this one. So odds are it's probably the 23rd by this point in California. And we're talking super early Saturday morning on the East Coast at this point, like 4 or 5, 8, or 3 or 4 a.m. East Coast.
Which is unthinkable unless you go to IWA.
Brian Cage has his moments in this content, but to me, Chris Hero's the threat to Roderick's title. I don't buy Cage's near falls as much as I do Hero's.
I like Brian Cage. I do.
I do as well.
You know, he's always been super nice to me, and I've seen more of Brian Cage than I would have want to see. Don't ask. But there are parts of him where there's certain things about him that I just don't buy. I don't buy what he sells. You know, I look at him and I see that his entire gimmick is what he is, the effing machine, the Swolverine. He's monstrous. But I just don't see champion. And especially for a company where if you're going to hold a belt, you have to be able to put on great matches. I mean, you look at some of the past, World Championship title holders. Roderick Strong being the current one. Chris Hero, one of, the other opponent in this. Joey Ryan, El Generico, Kevin Steen. All were able to put on damn good matches.
Not just damn good matches, but multiple damn good matches in the same night on occasion, specifically when it comes to people like Generico and Steen.
Yeah. So, Brian Cage is able to have good spot matches, I think would be the way to say it. I don't buy him being the kind of guy that can go 20, 30 minutes with somebody and have a viable match. So let's be honest, this is another 20-minute match. So like you said, the only one that I could buy actually taking the belt off of Roddy is Hero.
Eventually, Roderick Strong does retain the title, pinning Brian Cage after a second stick kick, because he actually goes on a stick kick spree at the very tail end of this match. He stick kicks Cage, he stick kicks Hero, and then he stick kicks Cage a second time for the finish.
Stick kick party!
Well, given who he was aligned with in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla at the time, it makes perfect sense.
Mount Rushmore 2.0.
Absolutely. Specifically, the super kick partying Young Bucks.
So, you know what I miss? And actually, you got a taste of it at NXT TakeOver Chicago, and you're starting to see more of it. I seriously miss Messiah of the Backbreaker, Roddy Strong.
Well, I think that you're kind of starting to see that in NXT, and specifically with the fact that he switched over his finish to the end of Heartache, the vertical suplex backbreaker.
Which, by the way, I was there, the night he pulled that out for the first time, because he pulled it out at TakeOver Chicago. The crowd freaked when he pulled that out.
Yeah, when he pinned Eric Young with it.
Yeah. While my buddy and I were texting each other back and forth after the match, we're just seeing how long can we hold Excalibur's call of it whenever Excalibur would actually call it, because, he's screaming for as long as he could. So you're starting to see that. That's actually what I miss. I like Messiah of the Backbreaker more than douche nozzle Roddy Strong, like you get here.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of that has to do with the way he's being portrayed in NXT right now, too, as well, with the usage of his wife and his young son to help get over Roderick Strong, the person, rather than Roderick Strong, the wrestler.
Indeed. So, Alrighty. Guess what?
Main event time.
It's main event time. It is the finals of the DDT4, and it is for the PWG World Tag Team Championship, our third title match of the night. It is the Beaver Boys putting their belts on the line against the Carolina Boys. Everyone's tired. The fact that they essentially were able to get the crowd to make, a major reaction like they do kind of shocks me, because it's very clear at this point we're talking Saturday morning.
Oh, no, that's one of the things I have written down in my notes is the fact that the crowd turned very hot, and I think a lot of that has to go to the credit of the psychology involved. It's not something you usually say on an independent match, but the psychology employed specifically by John Silver and Alex Reynolds, the Beaver Boys. I want to give them a lot of credit here. I think that they did a fantastic job of being complete dickhead heels and going directly after the knee of Andrew Everett, specifically the surgically repaired left knee of Andrew Everett.
Absolutely. But I think it also did help because, if I'm not mistaken, Andrew Everett was just now coming back from an injury himself on his knee. So, the fact that by this point, it's playing into everything definitely helps as well. So, this was definitely more of a... This was not like the matches that we had seen from both teams earlier on. Well, kind of from the Beaver Boys. This was definitely more of a story match.
Yes, absolutely. This was definitely more story over spot.
Because Andrew Everett takes an absolute ass whipping, especially on his knee, for pretty much the entirety of the match. But then at the same time, guess who ends up picking up the victory and in turn garners what you might call the biggest reaction of the night?
Oh, no,
Andrew
100%.
Trevor Lee.
100%. Not to mention, Trevor Lee kind of makes his reputation in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla from when he originally came there as the new version of Mr. Small Package, the old standby for Daniel Bryan Danielson on the Independent. Trevor Lee did much the same thing when he first came to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. He was beating people with small packages, and it was a small package roll-up, and that's why I got this match confused with the earlier tag team match against the Inner City Machine Guns. It is a small package roll-up by Trevor Lee that pins John Silver's shoulders to the canvas to give Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee the tag team titles.
It was definitely a different match from the previous ones. Not to say that it was a bad match. It wasn't by any means. I would argue the Beaver Boys' best match. Maybe it was not the best match for the Carolina Boys, but that bar was pretty high after the previous match that they had.
Well, we'll be talking about that a little bit later because I think you just told me we might disagree on one of the things in our big finish.
Possibly. Which at this case is a very rare occurrence.
Yes, indeed. However, I also do want to say one thing here. I'm only familiar with Andrew Everett from the work that I've seen of his in Impact Wrestling, what little of Impact Wrestling I had watched recently. And that's all the general viewing of Andrew Everett that I had going into this particular show. I'm going to state right now, right here, Andrew Everett impressed the hell out of me on the entirety of the show. I was super impressed, not only by his high-flying ability, but also, as he proved here, his ability to tell a story. Everett's one to watch in the future, in my opinion. And it's entirely possible.
Very little doubt.
And it's entirely possible that you could argue when it comes to Andrew Everett that the future is now.
He's not in NXT.
Yet.
Well, we'll see. Anyway, speaking of we'll see, it's time to see what we do and don't agree on, as it is time for the big finish. Best and our worst match. Best best and our worst match, and our cash and our trash for this show. We usually start with the matches, so let's go with that. And we pretty much already agreed on one, so why don't we get this one out of the way? Worst match of the show, Beaver Boys and Monster Mafia?
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Never got out of first gear.
Only match on the entire show I have rated less than 2.5 stars.
That changed.
I have this match at 2 stars, and it's the only match that I had on the entire show that's less than that. That doesn't at least hit break even for me, because to me, an average match is 2.5 stars.
The midway point, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, exactly. This, like you said, they never get out of first gear. They clearly seem to be on different pages. The crowd could not be bothered to give a crap, and I think a lot of that had to do with the long intermission. And the brawling in the crowd didn't help matters because, unless, like I said earlier, unless you were directly in front of the action, based on the way that the setup is in Reseda, you weren't seeing a damn thing.
I do wonder if you had flipped the 2 semifinal matches, would this match have been regarded better? With the crowd more into it?
No, I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because I think that it's into the matches the crowd got for the Inner City Machine Guns against Andrew Lee. I did it again. Against Trevor Lee and Andrew Everett. I think that would have taken the crowd out and had them dead for this match anyway. So it really, realistically speaking, it didn't matter placement on the card. I think it had more to do with the fact that these guys just didn't connect.
All right, fair enough. What is your best match for the show?
I think this is the one we're going to disagree with because I actually give it to the main event. In Pro Wrestling Guerrilla these days, the major focus seems to be specifically on spots over story. The main event is the rare example of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla getting both correct. There are a lot of really cool-looking spots in this contest. Andrew Everett crawling and climbing up to the top rope to hit his shooting star press with the bad knee is some of the best storytelling you can have in this entire show because he's selling the knee all the way up the ropes. The crowd absolutely loses their crap for the finish as well because it's a callback to the older Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows where Trevor Lee was beating people with the small package roll-up. I had no complaints about the main event. One of the best start-to-finish matches I've seen probably this year, even though the match itself is from 2015. So I'm going main event here. I know we disagree. I know we disagree here, and I know Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee are in your match of the night. It's just not this particular contest.
No, you would be correct. The crowd seemed least comatose and most into Lee and Everett's semifinal match. So in my case, I'm going with the semifinal match of the Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee against the Inner City Machine Guns. This was a hell of a redemption match for the Machine Guns, and it was essentially having 4 guys go out there and just have a blast. And my guess is the Inner City Machine Guns wanted to redeem themselves from their relative snorefest that was the match before, their first round match or their quarterfinal match. And, you know, it just, the whole thing ended up being a lot of fun. So, you know, the crowd definitely seemed the most into it. And coming off the relative snooze fest that was the previous match, I actually feel bad because you had one team in a snooze fest, and then that team had to turn around and come back from a snooze fest. But they absolutely delivered. You know, Ricochet, I am never not impressed by Ricochet's dive, not over the top rope, but over the top turnbuckle and ring post to the side.
That Fosbury flop thing he does over the ring post is one of the most ridiculously impressive things in pro wrestling.
And he hits it like it's nothing.
Because the risk-reward factor on something like that has to be super small, because if you even screw that move up a hair, you're doing major damage to yourself.
Yes, if you land on that ring post, you're done for a while. And for him to hit it with absolute ease is amazing. So for me, I am going to go with Andrew Everett and Trevor Lee's semifinal match against the Inner City Machine Guns.
Which is kind of ironic given how down we were on the Inner City Machine Guns opening round contest.
That's why I said I felt bad that one team was in a snooze fest and then had to follow a snooze fest.
Well, it worked out for
both of us that way.
It worked out for both of us that way because, to me, the Beaver Boys went from being in the worst match on the show to being in the best match on the show.
Alrighty, so what is your cash?
I feel like I say this a lot when it comes to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. It has to be Excalibur. There are very few broadcast journalists, to use the phrase. There are very few pro wrestling broadcasters who do as good of a job as getting you to relate to the story that's happening in front of you as Excalibur does for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. The only two people that I would put even in his league are Dave Prazak and Phil Colvin.
Funny you mentioned one of them. Anyway.
So yeah, I'm going with Excalibur's work at the commentary table.
I have a hunch I know what your trash is.
Maybe. We'll see.
Because I think my cash is going to play on that a little bit. It's the way their DVDs are edited. Because,
no,
yes.
No, that's not my trash, but I understand your point. Go ahead.
Yes, this is a very long show. And it's pretty much nonstop outside of intros and outros. That's it. And it's still an almost 3-hour DVD. But
37.
I said almost.
I'm just giving you the official number. Go ahead.
But there is no futzing about on these DVDs. None whatsoever. It is, you get the upcoming match, the card, the match card for the upcoming match. You get the intros, and off we go. There's no major rest period. You're looking at 30 seconds in between on an almost 3-hour show. I actually do like the fact that PWG does not screw around, and they don't have to deal with licensing or anything like that, because let's be honest, it's something we'll talk about on next week's episode, or it's something that relates to next week's episode, in the fact that one of the things that I think ruins a lot of the pay-per-views on the WWE Network is them not wanting to pay for the licensing and having to cover up music. I would actually prefer that there were no themes than dubbed-over themes. So I'm actually okay with how PWG does what they do. There's no screwing around on their DVDs, so they can put a 4-hour show on a 3-hour DVD, and they don't have to worry about double-disking it unless it's a major show like, the night 3 of the Battle of Los Angeles, because I think their last 3 years have been double discs, but that's only because the shows are so damn long.
Or something like one of the anniversary shows occasionally just crossed over into 2 DVDs.
Yes. So I like the fact that PWG does not screw around with stuff like that, and they just get right to the matches on their DVD. Alrighty. So let's switch gears here. What is your trash for this?
It pains me to say this because I think there have been a lot of times before where the atmosphere has played such a major part in helping Pro Wrestling Guerrilla become what it's become. For the most part, this crowd was terrible for this show. And yeah, I understand the whole trap of having to be there for 3, 4, 5 hours probably. I get it. I do. But at the same time, these guys are out there busting their asses for you by and large, and for a good portion of most of the matches, the crowd was giving them nothing in response. This Pro Wrestling Guerrilla crowd, and it's happening in other places too, like we kind of touched on it earlier, the NXT Full Sail crowds have gotten progressively worse and worse and worse when it comes to these kind of things. The TNA Impact Zone crowds got worse and worse and worse when it came to that. Originally, the TNA Impact fans were some of the best fans on wrestling because they were super into everything that would happen. Towards the end of their run in the Impact Zone with TNA, the crowds were some of the worst in wrestling history, almost as bad as the WCW Disney crowds, where they were bringing in a bunch of tourists that sat on their hands for most of the matches. So I'm going with the attendance. I'm going with the crowd at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla as my trash for the show, and I'm just going to say I'm very disappointed in the way that they treated most of the action. There was very few things that they actually cared about. Unless people were going out there and breaknecking it, they didn't care. They didn't respond.
Mine is along the same lines, but it is different. It's not so much the crowd. For Christ's sake, PWG, move into a bigger damn building. I understand that they probably have a hell of a deal, with the American Legion Hall. They probably pay very little rent, if anything, a lot like how AAW works out deals with the Berwyn Eagles Club or Shimmer with the Berwyn Eagles Club. But AAW, eventually moved into a larger venue, a venue that holds almost triple, and they never not sell out now. So they went from 250 to over 700. You're seeing it with Wrestle Circus now. They are moving out of 800 Congress. As a matter of fact, I just saw the notification that their show next weekend is going to be their last at 800 Congress before they move into a building they bought. So they'll go from a crowd of 750 to a crowd of approximately 2,000. I understand wanting to, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But for Christ's sake, PWG, when your tickets are selling out in 5 minutes, no matter what price you give, when people are complaining that they can't get tickets to your show because they sell out so fast. I got a buddy who wanted to go to Bola. He got tickets for 2 nights. He ended up finding tickets for the second night, too. So he's there for all 3. But this is becoming too big of an issue. You need to find a bigger venue, PWG. You're too big for Reseda now. So that's my trash for this one, is the fact that it kind of does go along with the crowd, but they need to move out. They really do.
No, and I think you can kind of tie that into when they were doing the WrestleMania and the Kurt Russell reunion shows and stuff, where they were running in that ballroom for the hotel, and they were putting anywhere from 500 to 900 people in the arena for those shows. And a lot of those shows are probably people that would go to PWG events if they had the ability to get tickets to go to them.
Surprise, surprise, though. You can't go to them.
Yeah, just because of the fact that there's only so many people you can fit inside of the American Legion Hall without triggering issues with the fire department out there. Because I happen to know for a fact, I have friends that have gone to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows, that fire marshals do go to Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows and tell PWG, yo, you're capped, you can't let anybody else in.
And then PWG lets 20 more people in. But that's pretty much how it is, and the same thing happened to Wrestle Circus, where they were only allotted a max of 700 for their shows, and the fire marshal would be there, and when they hit 700, they see how everything would go, and they say, okay, you can let 10 more people in, that's it. They let 15 in. And the fire marshal would actually threaten us that if you let a 16th person in, we're shutting you down. AAW, even Bourbon Street's getting to be too small. It's turning into a sweatbox. My God, their June show, it was 94 in the building. I've never seen more clothes being taken off in terms of T-shirts and stuff like that. It was not a pretty sight.
Pro wrestling fans without a shirt on. Yikes.
No. Wife beaters.
Still.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yikes.
So, all right. Before we get out of here, what is your final rating for the 2015 edition of the PWG DDT4?
Despite all the general knocking that we did, I actually did, by and large, enjoy the show. I felt I was entertained for the 3 hours that I spent watching it. I felt that it was worth the 3 hours that I spent watching it. And a lot of that, again, has to go back to the fact that I think that Excalibur does a fantastic job of keeping you entertained, keeping you informed, and keeping you up to date on everything you need to know for whatever it is you're seeing in front of you. My final score for DDT4 2015 is a 7.5, which, for a lot of people, is low for a PWG show. And this particular PWG show is kind of disappointing in that regard, in that there's no super blow-away contest, but there's nothing outright awful either on the show that would drag it down any lower than what I'm giving it. I'm going 7.5, Patrick. How about yourself?
I'm along the same lines. There's a couple of matches that I did not enjoy, but they were not necessarily bad. There was no bad match on this. So, automatically you're looking at a minimum of a 6. Now, I would be a little hard-pressed to go that high. An 8 or a 9, like, to me, PWG was getting in their heyday, would have been a chip shot. But this one, I think we're starting to kind of move past the quote-unquote heyday of PWG. Granted, it's still, the place to be, but it's starting to be knocked down a peg or two. And I think it started right around here. Where you started to see, okay, it's flip, and not a whole hell of a lot of storytelling. It was about this time that AAW started to grow. It was about this time AIW started to grow again after losing some of their top guys. So you're starting to see other companies who were trying to catch up to PWG are trying to catch up, and are catching up. So for me, PWG tried to stay ahead of the game, but this was not the show to do it. So I'm going to go with a 7, but I was actually hard-pressed to go that high. I very easily was considering giving this a 6.5. So I'm going to go with the 7, but it actually could have been lower, and it should have been higher. And that about wraps it up.
Tonight's episode of Wrestling Unwrapped has been brought to you by the Madhouse Podcast. Stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Podcast. If you're a fan of anything wrestling-related, DVDs, action figures, VHS tapes, magazines, posters, and so much more, you can find it inside of the Madhouse Podcast. Once again, stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Podcast. Mention you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped and receive a free gift of your purchase.
And as always, we are a presentation of the W2M Network. For more information, including all of our past episodes, and to kind of see where things are going in the future, considering guess who got stuck writing all of the bios for everyone in the Mae Young Classic, which the podcast about that will also be coming soon, starting August 20th. Be sure to head over to W2Mnet.com. So,
we also thank you. We also thank you if you are listening to us over at our, once again, sponsor, 411mania.com/wrestling.
This is the first podcast since that came back together. I have to get used to that.
I took care of it. Send it home, Ketchup.
I know. So that about wraps everything up for this week. However, we will be back next week, and we will be starting something again that we did a few months ago, as we will be going back and covering the big three pay-per-views from August 1998 throughout August of 2017. So we will kick things off next week with ECW Heatwave 98, headlined by a six-man Dudleyville street fight. It is Big Dick Dudley, Bubba Ray Dudley, and Devon Dudley, those damn Dudleys, taking on Little Spike Dudley, Tommy Dreamer, I swear to God I almost said Tommy Rogers, and the Sandman.
If I'm not mistaken, Tommy Rogers would actually appear in ECW in 1997, but not 1998.
Are you sure you're not thinking of Tommy Rich?
No, Tommy Rogers. He wrestles at one of the November to Remembers.
Oh, okay. So, and then following that, the following week, we will be covering WCW Road Wild 1998, headlined by Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff versus Diamond Dallas Page and Jay Leno. God.
I just love the disdain with which you say that. That show's going to be so much fun.
Then the following week, we will not be doing a normal episode, as that will be SummerSlam Sunday, which means we will have to watch the 2-hour pre-show of SummerSlam, the likely 4-hour-long SummerSlam, then watch the at least hour-long bracketology, then do Woo Reacts for SummerSlam, and then possibly record a review of the bracketology previewing the Mae Young Classic. God help us. And then the 27th, we will be finishing up August of 98 with the Highway to Hell SummerSlam 1998, our third venture to the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. So
Main
that is what...
By?
Huh?
Main evented by?
I don't know which way it swings.
However, Highway to Hell.
The main event, obviously, being the Highway to Hell. It is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. And including one hell of a sub-main event, Triple H versus The Rock in a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. So,
I think that about wraps it.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that about wraps it up for us. I'm Harry Broadhurst.
And I'm Patrick Ketza. Thank you very much, as always, for joining us for Wrestling Unwrapped episode number 41, the 2015 PWG DDT4. We'll see you next week, guys.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.